So I'm a hospital administrator by profession for 40 years. And I went right into, out of grad school, went right into this beautiful congregationally run healthcare system, Catholic healthcare system that I was so excited. And almost immediately as I got into that, healthcare went through a huge transition. And we went from, and people who are in the industry understand this, from being a cost-based system into a diagnosis-related DRGs, was the basis for everything that you would be reimbursed. Long story short, it turned the finances upside down in hospitals, and it also changed the focus that hospital systems, even Catholic hospital systems, really put on the delivery of care. The number one focus, unfortunately, became finances. There was a mantra at that time: no margin, no mission. If you did not make enough money, you couldn't pursue your mission. That's backwards. You have to have faith in God. He'll provide the resources, and pursue the mission at all costs. He will provide. But anyway, that's the transition we went through, and that's the transition we're going through now. It has become secularized in a great degree. I was frustrated. I left my Catholic system. I always knew at some point that there was a fire inside of me, that there was a way to get back to this. I just didn't know how to do that. So anyway, I came to know this guy named Padre Pio through EWTN. I had no idea about him before, and frankly, I had no idea that he built a hospital. I just learned about him, and he impressed me very much, and I built a devotion to him because he was a miracle worker and because he had done so many amazing things. Then I found out that he built this hospital called the Home for the Relief of Suffering. And the minute I saw the name of the hospital, I thought, there's something special there that I need to at least look into. And I started reading more and more and more about it, and was like, holy mackerel. The focus on the relief of suffering, the twice Jesus in the suffering and wretched patients when they come in, the suffering and wretched Jesus when they come in. And he says his people are the hands of Jesus in serving them. And I was so impressed, and I thought, this may be the model that we could emulate back here in the United States to reemerge our foundational roots in faithful Catholic healthcare delivery. So I went and I started reading all about it and everything. And one day, and I was very impressed, and one day I was sitting there reading about Dr. Sanguinetti, who was handpicked by Padre Pio to build his Casa hospital. And Dr. Sanguinetti was quoted 6 years before the hospital actually opened in their magazine that they printed. And I was reading this quote when something very special happened to me. And the quote was, the Casa Sieva del Sofferenza, which is the home for the relief of suffering, should therefore be the first link in a great chain. It should be the model for many other innumerable casas with the same name and above all the same spirit, which must bring love to all of humanity. A program which would make us tremble with awe if it was not inspired by God, who is above all love. The reason I know that by heart is because that's our vision for Catholic Healthcare International and our Casa USA vision. What happened when I read that was I looked up, and standing in front of me was Padre Pio. It never happened to me before. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. And he looked at me, and I could feel his hand on my arm, and he said, "It is time." And that was it. And then he disappeared. And I just was awestruck, and I didn't know what to think. And I didn't know whether I was crazy. I didn't know what was going on. I went home. I told my wife, something very strange happened to me today. I got to look into it. I have no clue. I did not have a spiritual director at the time. So I went out. At least God impressed me enough to go get somebody to guide me through this. And so I went out to Opus Dei and found a really, really good spiritual director who, long story short, helped me discern my way through this, discern the reality of it, and then lay a path out as to how to respond to it. Because as scripture says, you will know them by their fruitfulness. So if something great happens and nothing is a result of it, so what? And everything. So he guided me. He guided me on how to situate my family, because at this point, I had a family to support, and tuitions and everything. So get that all in order so that I could then go pursue this, what I envisioned as a calling. So we got that all set up. We got things situated, and then I went over to San Giovanni Rotondo. I had never met anybody over there before. I didn't know anyone. Someone set me up with some meetings with several people in administration, medical administration. My last meeting was with the president of the hospital, Dr. Domenico Krupi, and we were sitting there having a great conversation. And I was telling him how I was being called by Padre Pio to implement Dr. Sanguinetti's vision of these casas in other areas beyond Italy. And all of a sudden, he stopped. And I had told my wife in advance, I said, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to tell him that this guy from St. Louis, hospital administrator, thinks he's being called to replicate the Casa, what Dr. Sanguinetti said, over in the United States. And I'm going to get thrown out of my ear. They're going to say, what in the world is going on? So anyway, we're having this great conversation, and he stops and he looks at me and he says, why are you doing this? And I stopped and I thought to myself, as vividly as I can remember today as then, here it is. I'm going to get thrown out on my ear. And I said, because Padre Pio told me to. And I looked at him and he kind of smiled, and there was a look in his eyes that I could tell. And I said, why are you doing this? And he goes, because Padre Pio told me to. And Dr. Krupi didn't live in San Giovanni. He transported every week from Genoa, which is where his family was, away from his home. It was a great pain for him to have to do this, but he loved it because he was called by Padre Pio. Needless to say, Padre Pio is working on many people in their lives. And I've seen this all throughout since we've pursued this. That was in 2008, and I've seen it all the way through. And I meet people like Greg, who he's touched, but this is over and over and over again. I can countless little things. So suffice it to say, we put together a collaboration agreement. We are formally going out now and trying to implement that. Our Casa USA vision, which you've heard much about in this novena, continues to go on, and it is really gaining momentum. Tomorrow, we're going to have another session where we're going to unveil some amazing plans for you. So that is my story of Padre Pio's calling. I share it with you, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's it, period. Padre Pio told us, and we're unworthy instruments, and we're doing the best we can, and he's going to work amazing miracles because we're willing to say yes. As Mother Angelica said, God's looking for people willing to do the ridiculous so that he can do the miraculous.